This episode is sponsored by Squarespace. Whether you need a domain, website, or online store, make your next move with Squarespace. I've said it before on this channel, but I don't think every photograph we take needs to tell a story. I think there's lots of genres of photography that are just about good aesthetics. But I do really believe in the power of photography to tell a story if that's how we want to use it. My friend Josh Edgoose, or as you probably know him, at spicy.meatball on Instagram, is someone who for me really knows how to tell a good story with his frames. And that's who I want us to spend time with today. Most of the shots he takes are quite wide, usually between 28mm and 35mm, and that means that he brings a lot of complexity into his frames. They almost feel like street tableaus, including lots of different subjects. But he's good enough and patient enough in the way that he shoots that he's able to bring all those elements together to give not only a pleasing composition, but also to give us a good story to look at. And his images are often humorous, focusing on the lighter side of life and our goofiness as human beings being in society together. But he always puts a lot of empathy into his shots because I think he has empathy for people in general. So you never feel in one of his images that the subjects of his photograph are the brunt of the joke, that we're laughing at them. And instead it almost feels like he's conspiring with these people together to tell us a good joke. So I thought Josh would be a great guy to chat to on this idea of storytelling with our street photography, and especially using juxtaposition and humor to show images to the world that have a lightness to them, that bring a smile to people's faces. So I'm going to shut up now and let you hear from my friend, Josh Edgoose.
So I took an A-level in photography at college, so that was probably 15, 16 years ago. I mean, I just saw it as an option, like it was just like, I'm going to do French, geography, maybe I'll do something that's just a bit less dry. And I had no background in art or anything, so I was like, I'll try photography. That kind of looks like a fun option, and yeah, I absolutely loved that. The thing with that course though, we had to shoot and develop 5 rolls of HP5 a week, and that was all we could do. Which was amazing, like having this darkroom available, I guess. But for me, it was just a bit of a struggle. Like I was really obsessed with Martin Parr and being able to like shoot in color and stuff. And it wasn't an option. And I eventually persuaded them to let me take color photographs. But digital cameras at the time were just these like 2-megapixel Sony Cybershot things. And everybody was making these beautiful darkroom prints. And I was just using this like 2-megapixel nonsense and like printing it out with my like LaserJet printer at home. And it was just... It was a bit embarrassing thinking about it. So I finished the photography A-level, and then I kind of wasn't really hugely interested in photography for a couple of years. I think I was almost a bit like put off it by the whole, rigorous art side of it. And then a couple of years after that, I ended up starting a clothing business. I was designing sweatshirts and backpacks and stuff, and I realized I had to buy a camera to actually take the product shots and take pictures of models and stuff. So I went out and bought a camera, and I actually found myself enjoying taking the photos more than I did designing the actual clothes I was making. So I just kind of took a bit of a steer with the camera, ended up carrying that around with me. I then took a trip to New York, just a holiday, and kind of saw all this action and stuff going on the street, and it reminded me of when I took my photography A-level. It reminded me of these photo books I had of Gary Winogrand and John Murowitz, and I was like, oh, street photography is a thing, I've forgotten about that. And I'm in New York. I was actually at the they have a Easter Sunday parade in New York on 5th Avenue, and there were people they dressed up their dogs in like Easter bonnets and stuff, and I was wandering around taking pictures on my iPhone. Like, this is so much fun. And I got home and found my original Gary Winogrand street photography book and John Murowitz, and was like, oh my word, maybe I could give this a try, kind of thing. And I just kind of took my camera that I bought for taking these product shots and just started going out for walks, and it kind of developed from there, really. I've just been obsessed with it ever since. I do a lot of thinking about what makes a successful picture for me, and I guess these days when everybody's a photographer, which is amazing, there are more photographs than ever, I like to think that a successful picture is simply one that you want to look at for more than a split second. It just stops you scrolling on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and it just kind of draws your eye in. That could either be a nice flow of something across a frame, it could be a nice color, it could be just the light itself. anything that literally kind of stops you in your tracks for just a second longer than you normally would, I guess, that for me is a successful picture, and something I like to keep in mind when taking pictures, I guess. I mean, for me, I really like to try and make a frame that's busy, but not too busy. Over the years, I've found myself more drawn to maybe finding an interesting scene and trying to work on a picture within that scene. I've found the times when I've kind of grabbed a little snapshot while walking along the street, maybe the background's been a bit busy. I prefer having more control over what's going to happen, and for me that is simply maybe finding a location and maybe standing there for 15-20 minutes. So I often like to find an area, maybe an interesting wall or some kind of advertisement or something, like an initial starting point, and then maybe a nice flow of people, and trying to build a flow of people across the frame, again maybe not too busy, and then simply just by being there and positioning yourself, you are kind of increasing the chance of something happening. I think street photography is a lot about where you position yourself and simply just being there ready with your camera, and 99% of the time nothing will happen, but simply by showing up and giving it a try, that's the best you can do, I think, in my opinion. So I liken street photography to just gambling, really. You gamble your time and you may come back with something. More often than not, you will come back with nothing at all. You just have to invest your actual free time. I mean, any moment of free time I have, I will go for a walk with my camera. Yeah, I mean, it's just been years and years of getting the miles in, taking a lot of pictures, thousands and thousands of awful pictures of nothing. I mean, to be honest, I maybe get 4 or 5 pictures a year. I'm actually like, this is what I've been trying to do this whole time. This is what I've been aiming for. But more often than not, yeah, they aren't great, and that's just what it comes down to. But I think the biggest reward is when you do get a picture you are happy with. I mean, I'd say that. I mean, the reward is getting the picture you're happy with, but there have been times when I've gone for a long walk, gone home, absent-mindedly the next day, just formatted my memory card and wiped everything, and I've kind of thought to myself, it doesn't really matter. Like, I had a nice day, I went for a walk and took some pictures, so I really just like to try and keep as relaxed and open-minded about it, and just kind of take what the street has, take what comes, and if it comes together, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I had a real problem with that when I first started out. Every time I went out, I had this huge pressure of like, got to take some pictures, got to get it on Instagram, got to keep the momentum going. Every time I went out, I'd have this like crisis of like, do I know how to? Have I forgotten how to do it? I think for street photography, it's a lot about momentum as well. I find when I first go out with my camera, I'll be like maybe scared to take a few pictures, and then as the day goes on, you almost have to like build yourself up into it. There's a whole kind of almost like pep talk for yourself as you go along. It's like, no, you can do it, it's okay. And I really over the years try and harness that momentum from the word go, and be like, it doesn't matter, I've got my camera, gonna go for a walk, keep an open mind, and that's it at the end of the day. But yeah, it's went off on a bit of a tangent there, but to be honest, the first time I took a kind of slightly funny picture, I was like, wow, I didn't even know this could even be possible. I've seen like humorous street photography pictures, and I was like, okay, this is something I really want to delve into. For me, I've always tried to maintain that I don't want to take myself too seriously. I think that's just really important. And then when I first moved to London 10, 12 years ago, whatever, I was almost a bit scared of London. I was a bit intimidated by it. I thought people aren't maybe keep themselves to themselves, maybe people aren't very friendly, but just going out and seeing people on the day-to-day, I realised there is this, everybody does have a sense of humour. There is this slight sense of community. When people are on the tube, people have this like mutual respect. It's just quite addictive being like amongst people and building this empathy for what people are going through, what people are doing. And yeah, it just comes from this kind of just like love of people and humanity, and just those moments where people laugh or something weird happens and people are aware of it. There was this time when I was on the tube a few years ago, and there was this guy watching that episode of Friends where Ross gets stuck in his leather trousers. He was watching it on his phone. He was just laughing like crazy, and all the other people were like looking at him laughing, and they were laughing as well, and people were like watching it over his shoulder and laughing. And yeah, I just really like to try and have that lightheartedness in my pictures. I mean, obviously I do love more hard-hitting, serious photography, but for me, those are the kind of pictures I've just ended up taking and I've enjoyed taking. And I think there's a fine line. Like, I really wouldn't ever take a picture that like makes fun of somebody. It's more, I think I like to think about like, what would I feel like if I saw this picture of me appear online? That's really very conscious. I wouldn't ever want to kind of alienate. It's more just about these kind of like randomly occurring juxtapositions or kind of slightly humorous moments. So this picture in particular is probably one of the few pictures I'm taking that I'm actually really quite happy with. However, actually taking it and getting this final image was pretty much an accident. So I was walking down the Mall in London. It was a day of the Trooping the Colour. There was this, this kind of old Route Master bus driving down the street towards me, and I sort of kind of positioned myself so I get it like side on. I was like, this has a nice vintage sign. There's taxis coming. Maybe something will come together with this kind of like almost vintagey London. That was all I was kind of going for. I didn't really have anything in mind. But then as I was lining up to take this picture, the red arrows flew over, and everybody kind of rushed to the bus windows. They were looking out the window. All the people in the taxi were looking out the window. The bus driver was looking out the window. And also the slight kind of mystery, I guess, of what is everybody looking at. And you can see like people like even far off in the distance are staring up at the sky. So that was a complete surprise actually until I got home and I kind of loaded it up on my computer. I was like, oh, okay, something did come together here. That's quite fun. I took this last year actually. So yeah, 2020 was a bit tough for photographs, but I managed to get one or two I was pretty happy with, and this is one of them. So I went for a walk that day around London, ended up at Marble Arch, and there was this like a selection of elephant statues, and I thought maybe there's something going on here. There's people interacting with them, people were sat on them. I spent about an hour there wandering around and nothing really came together, and then I ended up just going back down Oxford Street and was like, well, this isn't really happening. I go up and down Oxford Street all the time. I'm going to go back to where these elephants were and try again. So I went back there, and then this family showed up, and this teenager just climbed on top of one and did a backflip off it, and I just quickly snapped a picture. Wasn't really sure if anything had come together, and then the kid's dad came up to me and was like, can't take this guy anyway. He has to backflip off everything. Got home, loaded up this picture, and I kind of was just really happy with the flow of people. There's kind of people on either edge of the frame. There's a dad taking his like daughter off, or taking his child off, one of the elephants in the background. I managed to get the guy in midair, and I just really I'm quite happy with how this has a nice flow of people, different elements going on, the kind of dynamic element of the guy backflipping, the separation of it. That's the kind of thing I really like to look for, and I think pictures like this maybe don't necessarily work very well on Instagram, just because getting this down to like the size of a postage stamp can be quite hard to view them. I do very often find that the pictures I'm most happy with, without fail, will bomb on Instagram, and it took me quite a long time to kind of come to terms with that, I guess, but pretty used to it now. So I'm like, I just have that as a rule of thumb. I'm like, I'm happy with this. It won't do very well on Instagram, but the important thing is I went for a walk, I had a nice time, I came back with a picture I'm pretty happy with, and that's that really. I used to use burst mode on my camera a lot, so I come in with just thousands of pictures. I mean, I don't now, just because I used it as like a crutch for so long, and then I was like, I'm gonna turn this off and see what happens, and you're like, oh, I do know when to press the shutter. But yeah, so I used to come home with just like thousands of pictures, so a part of the job was, editing it down, finding the picture, and I'm like not snobby about editing or any workflow. I think like I love to crop, I love to try loads of different kinds of crops. Like with a big 24 megapixels is plenty, you can crop loads. So I think about the whole process of taking the picture, selecting pictures, maybe doing some cropping, and then editing at the end as well, maybe kind of boosting the shadows, changing the highlights, white balances, etc. I do think of that as the whole process, and that's the end result as well. I mean, there are some times when I'll be like, oh, I've got this picture and it looks fine as it is, I don't need to do anything, but yeah, I like the whole workflow all the way through. I think it's the same as choosing a film stock in a way, or making a print in a darkroom. It's just unfortunately spent in front of a computer, which is not ideal, but it is what it is. Digital photographs I found always quite flat, so I really wanted to build up a specific look to my pictures, and that's something I've kind of developed over a period of time, I guess. But for me, I just wanted to get a more kind of film-like look, but really punch into these colours. So in London in particular, there's this like naturally occurring like primary colour scheme. We've got the red buses, there's a blue on the underground, the yellow striped lines around the roads. So I really just like to kind of try and dial in to whatever colours are going on and really kind of make those punchy and stand out, and kind of just have this consistent look to the colours in my pictures to kind of maybe accentuate this kind of like lightheartedness or humour, and just hopefully tie it together into something a bit more coherent, I guess. It's taken lots of practice, and my opinion and my tastes on colours in photographs changes all the time. I mean, I've been trying different edits for years and years. I'm now at this point, maybe in the last 18 months, 2 years, where I haven't faffed around with this look too much. So I'm like, maybe I've got something together now, but yeah, I'm aware maybe in 6 months' time I may be like, oh, my sky should be a bit more purple, you know. It's just hard to step away, isn't it, with editing pictures? Hard to step away. Yeah, there's something about just like being amongst people, dialing in with a camera. I always try and keep like a kind of, I think street photography is a lot about your attitude as well. I always have a smile on my face. I try and be as polite and respectful as I can. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, it is mostly a hobby, you know, there's no real reason to be there. So I think just I always try and have that in mind. Like, I'm just going out taking pictures. And if everybody stops me and is like, what are you doing? I'll be like, I just love London. I've been taking pictures of London for years. This was really interesting. You were really interesting. I've recently started stopping people and asking for portraits as well, just to kind of add that extra element of just interacting with people. I really like just maybe trying to mesh the two together and build up like a portrait of like a local area or a city, and just try and get more of like an overall story together. I think that's almost like how I want to develop it, I guess, in the future. And I guess that's kind of potentially where it's going to go. But yeah, just being around people. I found also over the years, I've definitely built up this kind of more of an empathy with people than I had before. Previously, I was very much like in my own little world, and you just kind of, the more time you spend on the tube, walking around London, you realise everybody else has their own complicated life going on. Everybody has problems, everybody has things, you know. It's just, you kind of, just being around people, you become more and more aware of that. And I've definitely found that just walking around with the camera has just generally changed my attitude towards people and just the way the world is, I guess. In the long term, I'm just obsessed with taking pictures, and I want to just take more pictures around the UK. I mean, over the couple of months of the summer, I want to go to a few different seaside towns. Just really, I want to take what I've learnt over the last 18 months or so of kind of trying to dial into more little details and how to use colour a bit better, and really kind of build a kind of broader body of work around the United Kingdom, I guess. And it's just really exciting. I honestly feel like every time I go out with my camera, I take away something new, either in how people interact with each other, how to approach people for taking a portrait, how to kind of deal with whatever light's going on. Every time I go out, it just gets more and more exciting, and I honestly can't see myself doing anything other than just taking pictures all the time. It's just like, yeah, I'm just pumped, Sean.
So I hope that's given you a lot to think about, maybe even given you some ideas about how you can start to approach narrative street photography if that's something you're interested in. I'm going to leave links down below to Josh's website and his Instagram, so make sure to go take a look. He also runs a YouTube channel with his friend Shane called Frame Lines. I'll leave a link to that below, and they explore all things street photography. If you're interested in actually owning some of Josh's work and supporting him as an artist, now's a great time. He's just published his first monograph called Brilliant Parade with Setanta Books. I'm going to leave a link to that down in the description. Make sure to go along and pick up a copy, and be aware that these are limited editions, so once they're gone, they're gone. So if you are interested, act sooner rather than later. And finally, before I leave you with a selection of some of Josh's images, I just want to say thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this episode. If you're looking for a new website or a domain, they're a fantastic option. I've used them myself for almost a decade now for all my online work. As most of you will know, I sell a limited edition book of my own photography at the beginning of each year, and I remember the first year I did that being really nervous about setting up an online store because I thought it'd be so complicated. But the more I looked into it with Squarespace, the easier I saw it was. The financial side of things integrated really easily with Stripe, so I really didn't have to worry about that. And then I could see orders coming in, everyone would have their order number, I could see the shipping information coming in and all those details. And then as I received that order, an automated email is sent to the customer letting them know that I've got that. And when I ship that item, another automated email is sent with all the tracking information, and it's all done automatically. So it couldn't be simpler. Something that I thought would be really stressful ended up being really easy to do.
Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and go to squarespace.com/Sean Tucker to get 10% off your first purchase.